Hi, I'm Rick Miller, and this is
Xing the Gap.
It's been a while, folks, but I'm happy to be back with a bunch of new episodes in Season 2. The first one being a conversation with two extraordinary Canadian filmmakers, Adam Egoyan and Graham Foy. Adam is a Canadian icon behind classic films such as Exotica, The Sweet Hereafter, Chloe, and more recently, The Captive, Guest of Honor, and his upcoming film Seven Veils. Adam's been nominated for every prestigious film prize out there, including the Palme D'Or at Cannes, the Golden Lion in Venice, and the Academy Awards in Hollywood. And today, he's joined by Graham Foy, an up-and-coming young Canadian filmmaker whose recent debut feature, The Maiden, has been earning him kudos and award nominations around the world. Together, we dig into remembering our teenage years, shooting film versus shooting digital, graininess in film and theater, suspension of disbelief, low and high-tech magic, the evolution of music videos, film scoring versus licensing, musical motifs in film, the challenges of directing opera, focusing audiences on now, not next, commitment in live performance, the importance of connection, and important cultural knowledge. Name the Flintstones, Graham.
Fred Flintstone?
Yeah, and Wilma. Who's he married to?
Wilma.
Yeah, very good.
I know the kids.
You know the kids too? Okay, Adam, go.
Bam Bam.
Pebbles was actually their kid. Bam Bam was the neighbor's kid. Barney Rubble.
No.
I'm not going to take points away because you were eager there, and I think we have to reward, zeal and enthusiasm.
Misplaced zeal.
I zealously welcome you to
Xing the Gap.
I'm joined today by Adam Egoyan and Graham Foy. Welcome to both of you.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Graham, let's start with you. Some of my audience might know Adam's name a little bit more from having been on the scene for quite a while. Graham, how do you describe yourself right now? Because you're doing a lot of interviews. You have a very successful movie out right now. What's your story in your own words?
Well, I'm a filmmaker. I was born in Calgary, Alberta, which is where the feature film, my first feature film, The Maiden, was shot. And I currently live in Toronto, Ontario, and very grateful to be on the show today.
Calgary is where I premiere a lot of my work, so I'm very familiar with Theatre Calgary in particular. Is there something about Calgary that you carry with you in all of your filmmaking, like in all the stuff you've done?
I mean, maybe. I feel like this one especially, because it was very much sort of a film that was about, I guess, maybe some personal experiences in those spaces and the landscapes, and also the way, the specificity, I guess, of the way people talk and sort of how people exist there. I don't live there anymore, but it's something that was very close to me, and the memories are still very fresh as a young filmmaker. Sort of revisiting, I guess, those spaces that I was remembering from being a teenager felt fresh enough to sort of mine for material.
Cool. And do you identify as Gen Z, or are you kind of on the cusp of millennial?
Honestly, I don't think I fully know which one I am. I was born in '87, so I'm not sure if somebody has.
Oh, you're hardcore millennial, my friend. I'm sorry. Okay, and that's okay. Ultimately, they're just stupid names and distinctions that don't matter. But just for the record, you're a millennial.
Perfect.
Adam, these days, I don't know if you need to describe who you are and yourself, but how do you do it these days? What's your sort of big picture story?
I mean, it's interesting hearing Graham describe himself, because I will say I was born in Egypt. I'm Armenian. My family moved to Victoria, BC. So I moved to Victoria as a really young child. So I grew up there, and I moved from Victoria to come to Toronto when I was 18, but it's very embedded in my soul, and so I have a strong sense of that place and experiences that happened to me. So it's interesting. Like, I'm finishing my new feature called Seven Veils, but it's very much based on childhood experiences I had in Victoria, but not in the way that Graham is dealing with it. Graham's is very physical. You really get a sense of the physical space of not so much the city of Calgary, but sort of like areas outside, and I really, I really respond to his filmmaking. And I think I've seen his shorts and I've seen his feature now a few times. I think it's really one of the most auspicious, brilliant first features made in this country. It means a lot for me to see a young filmmaker like so embracing cinema. Like I think that's what I really get excited about. Like in many ways, not just in sensitivity to the use of time and structure and space, but just texture as well. Like Graham is shooting on film, and most of us, including myself, are shooting digitally now. So that's also moving to me. My evolution as a filmmaker is really based on accessibility to certain mediums. Like I started in Super 8 film because in Victoria, that's what I was shooting on Super 8. And my dream was to shoot in 16 if I could ever afford that, and getting a small grant that allowed me to shoot on a Bolex handheld 16 millimeter. And then thinking maybe one day I'd have access to synchronized sound. And, that would mean getting a more sophisticated 16 millimeter camera that would buffer sound, and the sound was crappy nevertheless. And then thinking, one day I want good sound. One day I dream of 35. And and then it's so strange that so much of my development is based on these shifting technologies. And now it's really very available. You can shoot a good looking film on an iPhone, but Graham has made the decision to go back to shoot on film. So that's really curious.
So Graham, maybe you can speak to that a little bit. I mean, that was clearly a conscious choice, right? With so many alternatives available to you. Why that choice?
Totally. I mean, I would say a big part of it was looking to masters like Adam, and how, the films that I grew up watching were all shot on film. The films that he started making. Maybe Adam, you shoot digital now, or did you shoot your most recent film digitally as well?
Yeah, I mean, I did, and only because, without getting into the detail, we just had to cover so much, right? And for the budget we had, like I was, it was using opera and using live theater, and so it would have been really like insane to have shot it on film.
Totally. I think I certainly see the advantages to digital, and it's funny hearing Adam talk about his progression through, starting with Super 8 and then graduating to 16 millimeter and then eventually 35 millimeter, and seeing those films those works that he's done, Sweet Hereafter and Exotica and all these sort of extremely sort of internationally recognized films were so inspiring to me as a young filmmaker, and seeing other filmmakers from across the world sort of that I guess visual palette and the way that film can sort of create, as Adam describes, like this texture. There's a sort of a grainy quality that separates us, I guess, from what the eye sees, and creates maybe just a subtle suspension of disbelief between the reality and maybe something more uncanny or cinematic.
Suspension of disbelief. It's a concept many artists in theater, film, and literature are familiar with, and it means that an audience willingly suspends their critical thinking and believes the story in front of them. The expression itself is attributed to poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge in 1817, but the concept originated back in Greco-Roman theater, and it's linked to this other concept of catharsis. Theater audiences are encouraged to ignore the fact that what's happening in front of them isn't really happening, so they can experience some kind of transformative release or catharsis by the actions and experiences of characters. It all might sound highfalutin, but it's actually very primal and instinctive. Sometimes it just feels good to be taken for a ride.
One of the things that I find interesting about film projection, and Graham, when you saw those films, you were seeing actual film projection, right? So it's not only shot on film, cut on negative, but then projected through a mechanical process. So you're also seeing, like there's like half the time you're in that room watching the projected image, you're in a black space, right? Because there's the movement of the frame, from one frame to the other 24 times a second. So we've kind of lost that, and which is where I think a lot of the magic happens, right? Because your brain is actually, trying to kind of create this illusion of motion, and so it's really this trick, but it kind of activates something in the brain. And I was aware when I was watching your show, Rick, that like the difference between what I was seeing, obviously with your physical presence on stage, how that intersected with the digital projection, but then these moments of shadow and light, where you have these conversations where, you're having two shadows, and your body, because you're such a great performer, being able to kind of create these two different personas. Those are the moments that actually really unsettle you, or kind of create this feeling of having to create that glue that makes it magic, right?
Yeah, I take a term that you used before, graininess, and call it's a theatrical graininess that I like. There's a certain texture to it. I grew up in the fringe, kind of doing theater for no budgets, like you guys did film for no budgets. And I've always loved that combination of high and low tech. From what I know about your work, Graham, you've done some music videos as well, right? Like my generation, Gen X, was often called the MTV generation. Cameras moving in and out. It was a very vibrant, but very kind of collage-y sort of aesthetic. So I'm wondering, not being a scholar of cinema or even of music videos, what did you learn from music videos that you keep applying to your films today?
I think that, firstly, I think that that's so cool to hear about these sort of lo-fi techniques. And maybe I'm like the worst millennial, because I feel like I really gravitate to that stuff over the sort of digital special effects. And I feel like I feel very aligned with you both, I guess, in this conversation, which is maybe somewhat funny because I'm supposed to be the younger folk here.
The point is to build bridges, not to create new walls.
True. But I mean, yeah, in music videos, I think like in the contemporary music video space, it's quite a low budget production space. So there's room for a lot of experimentation. Whereas I feel like, and I'm not an expert either, but I did grow up watching a lot of music videos, and I really remember on MTV and Much Music seeing these very like polished, very highly produced music videos that were, the budgets were sometimes as much as feature films, certainly art house film budgets, for like a 3-minute long video. And now that's kind of a transition. I think it's because of the format. They mostly appear on the internet versus on television. So maybe there's like some ad dollars that used to sort of justify the cost of those really elaborate videos. But I think for me, it really allowed me to experiment with a lot of different possibilities for narrative or lack of narrative, and experiment with the image and experiment with sort of tone and mood that I found really invaluable for now, I guess, how I approach making a feature film, making a narrative film. And music is really important to me too, and just how I feel, I guess, a cinematic space and sound. And so all of those things, I guess, definitely have factored into it.
Do you both still have a great deal of influence on what scores your music, what songs you use, what rights you pursue? I imagine that, like Adam, from what I know about your films, music is truly key, and you often have scores, but you also have songs that appear, right?
Yeah. And I'm really picky about those. Like I like using Canadian artists. Like in this new film, we're just getting. I've used them before, like Great Lake Swimmers, which is a band I really like. Mm-hmm. I've used like with Adjuster.
Everybody knows. Like I remember that in Exotica, right?
And also Jane Siberry in that film. But before that, we had Rough Trade, High School Confidential. But I remember we had to beef up the bass line. So I had Michael Dana, who's my longtime composer, kind of, it's interesting when I work in film, I can be really hands-on with music, right? Because it's I'm producing it. And so I'm making all the song choices. I've also worked with a band I really like, Eric Howden, Raised by Swans. So I'm really involved with music. I have a CD collection of every film from I would say films I was making in the 90s, of all the music that kind of went into either that's in the film, songs that are in the film, or that I've given to the composer, Michael Dana, as kind of references. So that applies to, like, I'm just about starting that process now. Like, so in the next few weeks, Michael's going to see it this week, the cut I have. And so there are songs and there's music, temp music. But in this case, we're working a lot with the opera, like the Richard Strauss opera, Salome, which I was just remounted here at COC. So when I'm working as a director in opera, I have no say. I mean, the music is a fait accompli. It's what it is. Even if I'm working with a new opera, it's the composer's world. I don't, as a director, have any input really in terms of how they're going to modulate or change or orchestrate that music. It's their game. But in film, like we control the sound. So in Graham's film, like the use of music is very sparse, but really beautifully harnessed to camera movement and it's so I would imagine, Graham, you're all over the music, right? And the sound design.
For sure. Yeah. I think maybe not at the same level that you're talking about, Adam, but we did license music for the film. We didn't work with a composer. I think I'd love to work with a composer on a future project, but was very picky, I guess, about the music that we ended up putting in the film, and also had to be quite, as Adam's saying, like the music is sparse in the film. It's a small budget film and we can only afford so many. So you have to make tough choices sometimes. And so part of it, a part of the way that the music is used in the film, there's this amazing track by the artist John Hassell that we use over the course of kind of the entirety of the film, but broken up into different pieces. And it's just this sort of one singular sound that's repeated in different lengths and different sort of volumes of that sound. I wanted to use it kind of like score throughout the film, but we actually licensed that track.
That's amazing. I could have sworn that was score because it's so specific. So is that an extended piece? Is that one track that you were like going at different points in that one track? Or
yeah, we used, I think there's certain parts where we sort of broke it apart to make the track. It's almost like hard to talk about without just hearing it, but it's like this, it almost sounds like a train whistle, like a ghostly train whistle or something, which is thematically important.
Motif. A motif is a repeated pattern, an image, sound, word, musical phrase, architectural detail, anything that is intentionally repeated within a work of art to achieve a particular effect. It comes from the medieval Latin word motivus, meaning moving, and its goal is to, again, take people on an emotional ride. I associate it with film scores from when I was growing up, like John Williams' Star Wars soundtrack, where every character has this recurring musical melody that's sometimes uplifting, da-da-da-da-da, sometimes ominous, dum-dum-dum-dum-da-dum. No surprise, Williams' biggest influence was Richard Wagner's operas, like The Ring Cycle, who some have called the original cinematic composition, way before the invention of cinema. On that repeated motif, Adam, I was going to jump a little bit further into the opera world, because I've talked a lot with Robert Lepage, who I've had the privilege of working with on so many productions, and he's talked about his work in opera being kind of a release from the sort of obsessive creative control that you need in his other productions, whether it's film or stage. Opera, there is that other director.
It's sort of the theme of the new film, right? Because the story is this woman who was an apprentice or was being mentored by someone like a Lepage on this production that she worked on in her 20s, and he's passed away. His name was Charles, and but he said in his will that if this production is ever remounted, then this woman, Janine, is to be the person to be brought back to remount. But she has so many issues with this production and the relationship she had with this mentor that she can't help but kind of try and make it her own and to shift things. And she comes across this issue where there's only so far you can go. Like it is this strange beast, because you're not going to change the music, of course, but also at a certain point, you can't really shift much of what's happening on stage, because the orchestra is suddenly the main player. And you are, as a director, really in some ways squashed. I had this experience the first time I directed opera. Actually, this opera, Salome, because I directed it first in the 90s with the COC, that during an orchestra rehearsal, I wanted to shift something, and I asked them to stop, and they kept playing, and I kind of said into the microphone, stop, and my assistant director basically tackled me to the ground and said, you can't stop the orchestra, it's their rehearsal. And suddenly I realized that, oh my God, we had 2 weeks left, but I had run out of rehearsal time. No one told me that. And actually, that scene is in the movie as well. There's a scene where Amanda Seyfried is trying to stop the orchestra, and they just keep playing, and it's kind of weirdly humiliating and kind of punishing to her. But it's a crazy thing. You are secondary. Absolutely. It's the music director, the conductor's show. It's the singer's show.
Mm-hmm. Graham, I'm going to ask a question to you because you're speaking to two folks who've been doing, they're doing this for a while and you've been at it for less time. What do you see the film industry needing in terms of qualities in order to actually just survive and make it through? And you're in Canada as well, which I'm sure has its own qualifications as to what it takes to survive in this business in Canada. So on the one hand, what are your aspirations here? And on the other hand, what qualities do you think it takes young filmmakers to be able to just push through what they want to make?
I don't know if I have the answer to those questions, but they're really valuable and good questions to think about. I think for myself, I'd love to continue making work that it challenges, I guess, maybe the way that we think about film in both form and in how we tell stories. I think something that's really important to me as a storyteller and just as a person is this idea of the present and trying to focus the audience's attention on what's happening now versus what's happening next, which is sort of the way that traditional storytelling operates within a narrative framework, of course. But I really love the power of cinema to do that. So I'd love to continue making films that maybe require more patience in that way, but I'm not sure that's the best way to get your films financed or made. But as an artist, I guess that's sort of where my head's at. But I think also the theatrical experience, as Adam so eloquently talked about, is so crucial and important to the way that we think about cinema and the way that we experience cinema. So I feel like making sure, doing everything we can, I guess, as artists and as people that work in the industry to try to create more of these collective experiences and to make sure that doesn't sort of become extinct is crucial, I think, to the survival of the industry.
I think what aligns both live theater and cinema is commitment on the part of the viewer, right? When you go to a live theater, you're committing yourself to be in that space. And if you leave that space, that whatever is presented on stage will continue without you. A lot of the artists that I admire in film are coming from that theatrical background, like Ingmar Bergman or Fassbinder, and they understand that there is a degree of commitment. So when I watch and when I say that Graham's film is supremely cinematic, it and I love what you said, Graham, about cinema is about the now and not necessarily what comes next, right? So this idea of committing yourself to that present, so that is a lot of that has to do with, I think, gesture, movement, with the way the frame works, the way it's presented, the way you trust what the language of that film might be, but that also involves a degree of patience, right? And so like Rick, I'm sure you, when you are structuring your shows, are able to have a sense that your viewer is committed to that time that they're sharing with you, that you don't have to necessarily hook them in that first 5 minutes, which is what I think happens when you do go to a streaming service. The language of so much that we see on television and on streamers is about, trying to hold people's attention. And there's a type of writing and there's a type of direction and a type of like an approach, which really, there's a muscle there, which is, and I admire it. I mean, I'm in awe of it, really, when it's working. But it is fundamentally different from when you know that your viewer is committed to that space that you're presenting in. And that's what links us to this ancient tradition of theater. And, it's just that people were committed in a way that they're not necessarily anymore.
Commitment. I toured a 9-hour play around the world, which might seem like hell on earth to some, but to theater lovers, lip sync was an unforgettable experience. It's a bit like binging a season on Netflix, except that it's done in the presence of others who are fully committed to spending the day experiencing something epic together. That kind of commitment is not easy in our society, with so much isolation, so much change, and so much choice. We're used to having everything we want at our fingertips whenever we want it. But part of the alchemy of theater and cinema, experienced in a cinema, is that the show won't go on forever. You need to commit to it. Through your work, and maybe I'll just start with you, Graham, how do you address isolation in your work?
I mean, that's a great question. I think in the Maiden, I address isolation through trying to show the value and the importance of connection. And that's something that I found was so central to my own experience as a teenager. My friends were my family at certain points. Like, those are the people that I spent so much time with. And then in my casting process, just interviewing young people, some of the kids who ended up being in the film, and also just interviewing kids that sort of helped workshop certain scenes in the film or helped us on set. There's this very sort of overwhelming experience of friendship. When we would talk about it in these interviews, it was often described as these very sort of small moments in their life, like staying up really late and just hanging out in a park or something, talking until the sun went down, is like the most memorable experience in their life. And it was pretty consistent across the board. And I found that really invigorating to hear young people sort of talk about, I guess, like these sort of more mundane ways of experiencing the world. They weren't talking about Instagram. They weren't talking about TikTok. They weren't talking about television shows. They were talking about like sort of simple experiences in their life as being the most profound ones that they'd experienced. And I definitely took that away when I made the film.
Mm-hmm. We've been in such terrible agreement this entire, this entire podcast. I think it's about time to get a little dirty and get a little competitive. So you ready for the game show?
Sure.
Since you're both quite visual folks, I thought I would start with a couple of visual, let's see. Okay, hold on here. All right. So Adam, what is this?
It's a ghost. So it's like, does it mean I'm ghosting?
Graham?
Snapchat.
It'll get easier, Adam, I promise.
Yeah, sure.
Who is this amazing artist, Adam?
Don't know.
Graham?
Kendrick?
Yeah, Kendrick Lamar. Okay, what about this artist? Who's it? Did an Uber Eats ad with Elton John recently. Adam, no. Graham?
Old Town Road. It's on the tip of my...
Oh, yeah, sure. Of course, I know. Yes.
Name of the artist is Lil Nas X. Sorry. Who's this? Creates music with her, I think her brother. Okay, Graham.
Billie Eilish.
Billie Eilish. Adam, maybe you know her.
Yeah, so this is Beyonce, right?
Yes, good. Ding. Who is this character, Adam?
Star Wars. Nobi Kenobi. No, it's not.
Nobi Kenobi. I love that. Okay.
I know it's Star Wars. Right?
It's okay. Graham?
Baby Yoda.
Baby Yoda, also known as Grogu from the show The Mandalorian. There you go. This is very different. This is in the cinema world. Okay, who is this character, Adam?
This is from Harry Potter.
Yes. Do you know the name of the character?
But I just
No,
know.
Graham?
Draco Malfoy.
Yeah, that's right. And it's going to be over soon, Adam. Don't worry. What about this musical? What's that?
Hamilton.
Hamilton. Good. Ding. What about this series? Series of movies.
Oh, sure. This is The Hunger Games.
Yes. Ding. This TV show. What show is this?
This is the Squid Game.
Good. Couple more, Adam. Who is this actress? Do you know?
Looks like Britney Spears, but it can't be, right? No.
No. Graham, do you know?
Is it Miley Cyrus?
It is. And Adam, who's this?
Yeah, this is Miley Cyrus too.
Also Miley Cyrus. Good. That was a trick question. And I believe you're done. Thank you, Adam.
It's crazy. Like I'm so bad at pop culture.
It's great to show.
I thought we were going to go back to like Dick Van Dyke and
but that's going for Graham now. That's going to Graham. He's going to get that stuff. Okay, Graham. Who are these guys?
Rolling Stones.
Who's this guy?
Larry Clark.
Adam?
Yeah, it's Larry. Okay.
Come on, Adam, you got this. CNN. I'm Larry King. Larry King. Who's this?
Don't know this one.
Okay,
Oh,
Adam.
Okay, cool. I'm Boy George.
Yeah, Adam gets a steal. Who's this guy? Graham?
Prince.
Prince. What TV show was this? Adam, do you know?
Yeah, Mr. T.
Yeah, Mr. T and the A-Team. Which 2004 movie starring Lindsay Lohan was turned into a Broadway musical by Tina Fey? Sort of a classic.
That's where my world connects. It's Mean Girls, right?
Yeah.
Because
How does that world connect? How?
I think Amanda Seyfried is in my new movie. She was in the original Mean Girls movie.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, and a couple of acronyms for you, Adam. Tell me, what does LMAO stand for?
LMAO. Don't know.
Graham?
Laughing my ass off.
IMO. Adam.
IMO. Don't know.
Graham?
In my opinion.
And last one, SMH. You're doing it right now. Graham?
Shake my head.
Shaking my head. I worked in a video store in the late 1980s, and the store was equally divided between two kinds of videotapes. What were they?
I know.
Okay, Adam?
Graham, do you know?
No, let's go right to you, Adam. You need some points.
Yeah, so Beta and VHS.
Beta and VHS. Have you heard of Betamax, Graham?
Yeah.
I think it was the porn industry had some connection to Betamax or something.
It's interesting because it was the better format, right? Like it actually gives you more definition than VHS. And so anyone who was remotely interested in cinema was like, stocking up on Beta because it looked so good compared to VHS. But it was like appalling how VHS won. But anyway, yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you an extra point just for geeking out on that one, Adam. That was really good. Okay, and last couple of questions. Name the Flintstones, Graham.
Fred Flintstone.
Yeah, and
Wilma.
who's he married to?
Wilma.
Yeah, very good.
I know the kids.
You know the kids too? Okay, Adam, go.
Bam Bam.
Pebbles was actually their kid. Bam Bam was the neighbor's kid, Barney Rubble.
No.
I'm not going to take points away because you were eager there, and I think we have to reward, zeal and enthusiasm.
Misplaced zeal.
So the Flintstones were based on a famous TV sitcom from like the 50s, and they were a cartoon adaptation of what famous sitcom?
I didn't know that.
Starring Jackie Gleason.
I had no idea.
Norton?
Mm-hmm.
Adam?
Yeah, the Honeymooners.
Honeymooners. Good. Okay. You guys were... the points don't matter. The points do not matter at all. It is purely about having...
But I do think that the Larry King thing, I hang my head in shame. That was not good. Sorry. That was one of my... I really should know Larry King. So.
Well, you should... all these questions are not a should. It's just do I or don't I, and who gives a shit, really, right?
I'm really good with porn stars.
Oh, are you now? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing how good I am with porn. Anyway, that's right.
Are you fishing for more points? Do you want to list some porn stars, or
I just throw that out? Yeah.
Adam, Graham, thank you so much for taking part in this. Hope you had fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Okay, Graham.
Thanks for having me.
Really great to see you again.
Yeah, likewise.
And great to be with you folks. As always, thanks to my two guests, filmmakers Adam Egoyan and Graham Foy. Adam's latest feature, Seven Veils, which reunites him with Chloe star Amanda Seyfried, will be unveiled, later this year, and you won't want to miss it. Graham's debut feature, The Maiden, continues to tour film festivals around the world, so look out for it at your local theater or streaming service in the near future. You can find a link to each project in the podcast description. My name is Rick Miller, and I wrote, recorded, and edited this episode with multimedia by my team at Kudos. For more about the Boom Trilogy and our many other projects, visit kudos.com or boomtheshow.com. Thanks also, as always, to my partners on this podcast, Leap, an online community where life experience meets innovation, created by CABI, the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. For more info or to become a Leap member, visit cabi.com/leap. If you're on a podcast player, please follow us, write a review, tell someone about this or other episodes you liked. You can also send me any questions, comments, or feedback, Rick Miller Actor on Twitter or Instagram, or email rick@rickmiller.ca. And hey, in a polarized world, you have a choice. Build a wall or build a bridge. Build bridges, not walls.
Xing the gap.